topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Life with Open Pages. We all have a purpose in life. Sometimes we just need a little motivation to point us in the right direction. This show is designed to help you create the life you were meant to live. I'm your host, Michelle Bannister. My goal is to motivate you to make simple life changes so you can experience a life with meaning, direction, love, and peace. Now let's start the show. Hello and welcome to another episode of Life with Open Pages. You know, tonight we're going to talk about how to find the right job faster. Plenty of people are looking for jobs right now, from that newly minted college graduate to men and women who may have lost their jobs during the pandemic or just waited till a little later to find something better. Now, my guest, Beverly Williams, she's going to help us with some straight shooting career advice. She's going to help us with on how to motivate ourselves on that job search and why, or maybe why not, answer all of those interview questions honestly. Please welcome to the show, Beverly Williams.
Michelle, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share my viewpoints with your listeners and your viewers.
Well, we're so happy to have you. Go ahead and tell us a bit about yourself.
I am the oldest of three children. I grew up in New Jersey. I attended college at Douglas College in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and subsequently pursued my master's degree at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill and worked for a while, and then decided to go to law school at night while I worked a full-time job. I can't tell you that it was easy, but it was very rewarding because I knew ultimately that I wanted to be a practicing attorney, although that's not where my career, at least in my mind, was going to end up. But I'm not sorry for the choices I made. I made informed decisions about the direction my career took, and I'm not sorry. I write professionally as a lawyer. I like to call it, rather than career advice, I like to call it career information. Everyone doesn't necessarily want advice, but information helps people make better decisions, I think. And I provide information based on my very eclectic employment journey. I've worked in the private sector, the public sector, the quasi-public sector. I've been on the board of a nonprofit. I've had the opportunity to be in the room, as the Hamilton play says, in the room where it happens, where decisions are made in the about business, about employees. So I have a sense of how these decisions can affect people. And a lot of times people, let me put it another way. We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know.
Yes.
And we don't know why we don't know it. Sometimes, at least in the military especially, information is shared on a need-to-know basis. And depending on where you are positioned in the hierarchy, you may not have all the information you would need to make an informed decision. So based on my eclectic career and the stops and starts that I've made, I felt compelled to share the information that I've acquired over the years and continue to acquire. Because at one point I was an HR executive, and now I have friends who are doing a lot of HR work, and they're very instrumental in keeping me abreast of what's going on. And I do the same online and in organizations.
Okay. And so when we talk about a job interview, how does someone prepare for a job interview?
To begin with, they should get their head right. And by that, I mean, don't go in with any preconceived notions. Do the work, no matter how qualified you think you are, no matter how well you think you communicate, no matter how talented you may think you are. You need to prepare. Take nothing for granted. You may be presented with an opportunity, and that's the way you should view, in my opinion, you should view the interview, because everyone's not getting interviews.
Right.
Keep that in mind. Everyone is not getting interviewed. And if you're being interviewed, you have already leapfrogged so many other people. So you want to take advantage of that opportunity. I forgot the name of the author who said this, and I'm quoting him. If only to paraphrase, there's nothing more expensive than a missed opportunity.
Yes.
You don't want to miss an opportunity. So you want to prepare. You want to make sure that your resumes, cover letters are in order, because you want to take them with you. Either have them on your phone or on an iPad or a laptop with you. Even have hard copies, paper copies, because you don't know. You may not have access to a printer. You want to be able to have and give copies of your resumes to everyone you meet, everyone who interviews you. You may even want to have one in an envelope in case the receptionist or the admin that you meet, you want to give them one too, because someone may misplace it. You know, there are a lot of resumes flying around online, on devices, very few on paper, but you want to make sure that someone where you interview has a hard copy of your resume, just in case, because from that hard copy, other copies can be made.
Yes.
And they're not inclined to call you and say, we've lost your or misplaced your resume. Could you please send us another one? They're not likely to do that. And unless it's a job for which you're eminently qualified and there are not many qualified people to choose from, it's not likely they're going to come after you. So you have to be ready. You have to be ready. You also hopefully will be going back to live in-person interviews. But if it's a virtual interview, you want to make sure that you look good from head to toe. Don't chance wearing your sweatpants and a sport jacket and a tie and a shirt if you're a male, or a top that is interview appropriate, and then wear shorts or have your underwear on or your pajamas. You don't know what might happen, and you cannot afford for anything to go wrong. If they ask you to stand up for whatever reason, you don't want to be embarrassed by doing so.
Yes.
So you want to be ready. You want to treat that virtual interview as if it were a live in-person interview. That means your hair has to be neat, trimmed. You have to look as professional as possible. Now, of course, it depends on the type of job that you're interviewing for.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a building service job, a building trades job, for example, you may be interviewing to be a plumber or an electrician apprentice. You may not need to be suited and booted, as they say. You can wear a nice pair of slacks, a nice shirt, and a sweater.
Sure.
You do not need to go that corporate look or that more formal look, but you have to research to see what is appropriate. And that's one of the most important things. And the internet is invaluable.
Yes.
You have to do the research. You have to find out what is expected from people who are being interviewed, from applicants. You can ask someone, but you want to make sure that whatever information you're getting is reliable. And you can't do that just relying on one source.
Sure. So when somebody's filling out, say, an application on Indeed online, and they've looked at the job description, I know a lot of people say, look for all the keywords and make sure that your resume or what you're filling out has all those keywords. Now, I can say personally, I have done that and still get a letter saying, thank you, but we're going with somebody else, and never even got an interview. So do you have any insight into how that works?
Not really, but let me say this. Going online and applying for jobs is what you should do. I'm not saying not to do that. But what is equally, if not more important, is that you network. You meet people, since we're working remotely in many instances, the networking has to be virtual. Go to LinkedIn, go to alumni sites, connect with alumni from the school that you attended, whether it's high school, college, graduate school, law school. Research these people, see what you have in common. You may both like the same sports teams. You want to connect with as many people and tell them you're looking for work, and tell them what you're looking for, if you know. And unfortunately, sometimes people don't know what they want to do. They're not fully committed to a particular career. And that's not a bad thing, especially if you're young and starting out, or if you're more seasoned and you may be re-entering the job market after a long absence. Mm-hmm. If you're open and you're flexible about the level you come in at and what you're going to do, then reach out to people and connect. And when we can go back into live face-to-face networking, by all means, whether it's your religious organization, a sorority, a fraternity, whatever, talk to the cleaners. When you go to take your clothes to be pressed, cleaned and pressed for your interview, tell the cleaners, the person that owns the cleaners, that you're looking for work, and ask them if you can send them a resume. You talk to everybody you come in contact, whether you know them or not, and approach them in a very non-threatening way, and very professionally and civilly tell them what you're doing and why you're doing it. Because I have found in my experience that networking is the best possible way to find a job. That is how contacts and relationships are established. And that may be, Michelle, why you didn't get an interview even though you were qualified. That's because one of the people who worked for the company recommended someone else who was qualified also.
Sure. Wow, that's interesting. So I know you have a book, Your GPS to Employment Success. Tell us about that.
This is a labor of love. I wanted to share, as I said before, the information that I've acquired over the many starts and stops of my career. I changed direction. I was in public administration, human resources when I started out. And then I went to law school and I worked for a Park Avenue law firm doing labor and employment relations. And from there, I went to a Fortune 500 company and I worked there as the vice president. I wanted to share the information to the extent that I could, share some of the information that I have acquired over time as an attorney, as an HR executive, as an employee, and as a person who has been fortunate enough to have an eclectic group of friends, uh, all different races, different ethnicities, different uh, sexual identities. Uh, I'm very close to a large number of young people. It's interesting to hear their perspectives and then talk to my peers and hear their perspectives. I've been asked to contribute to a series of interviews for Authority Magazine, which is an online publication about the future of work. And I'm really curious about what that's going to look like, what the future of work looks like. One of the things I was asked to do is to come up with 5 trends that I feel will be reflected in the future of work. And one of those trends is unionism. And the labor management relationship, I think, is vital to employment. I think there's tension between employers and their employees in many instances. But I think that if they can collaborate and communicate and be civil and come together in the best interest of the company and the employees, I think that's a win-win.
Yes.
And I think because of some of the vitriol and the dissension and concerns on behalf of employees, I envision a resurgence in labor unions in the United States. Could be wrong, but I think employees are going to find that they can't go it alone. That there's more influence in numbers. I could be wrong, but in my book, Your GPS to Employment Success: How to Find and Succeed in the Right Job, that's one of the things I talk about because I think people should know the difference between an open shop, a closed shop, whether they have to join a union or not. And they don't have to join,
right?
Even if there's a union on site. So, it's that kind of information. As I said, I like to share information. I also provided guidance with respect to working virtually and interviewing virtually, because fortunately for me, while we were in isolation, I was able to write the book. So I was able to make sure that it was current. So there's just a wealth of information. I use sports figures to as examples of what people can do to further their careers. For example, LeBron James, stellar performer. No one questions that. We can use his career strategy for our own careers. He set goals. He wanted to be an NBA champion multiple times. When he found he couldn't do it in Cleveland, after working and after playing at a very high level, and that's the other thing, showing up for work is not enough. The fact that you get hired and you go to work every day and you do your job, that's what they pay you for.
Right.
Now, remind me to tell you about the person who expected a promotion after working for 6 months.
Okay.
That's not realistic.
Right.
LeBron James stayed in Cleveland, I think, for 7 seasons, if I remember correctly. And when he didn't achieve or found that he couldn't achieve his goals, he left and went to Miami. And people may have to do the same thing. If you set goals for yourself and you find that you can't achieve them where you live or with your current employer, you should consider whether or not you need to make a change. Do you need to relocate? Do you need to find another job where you live? Can you find another job where you live that will enable you to achieve your goals? So we know He's got multiple championships. Now he went back to Cleveland. Now he's in LA. So he's achieved his goals.
Mm-hmm.
We can do the same thing. We do it now. I know everybody's not LeBron James. I get that. But we can do it on a smaller, more discreet level.
Absolutely.
And it's easy to do. I mean, it's easy to do if you do the work. You have to be prepared to do the work. But harkening back to the 6 months person, really upset because she had been working for 6 months and she was going to leave if she didn't get a promotion. Well, you laugh, but there are many people out there, the uninitiated, I call them.
Yes.
Think that 6 months is a reasonable time.
Yes.
Ron James gave it 7 years.
Correct.
So, 6 months, 7 years.
Big difference.
I would be satisfied if you landed someplace in the middle.
Yes. Yes. So how do we motivate ourselves physically, emotionally, mentally, just for that job search? Because, it can be exhausting.
You're right. And we know now, as a result of the pandemic and the isolation, the working from home, the lack of social interaction, that emotional and mental wellness is critical. And looking for a job can be off-putting because to your point, Michelle, you may not get a response to your numerous resumes.
Right.
They may not respond to you, and you may feel some kind of way about that. That may affect how you feel about yourself. You may feel that you're not as qualified as you thought you were. You may feel that you're not as marketable. You may feel that nobody wants you. Don't let the job search define you. You have to get in what I call the zone.
Okay.
You have to set yourself up for success. And the first thing I suggest doing is sitting down and coming up with a schedule. What are you going to do on a daily basis? Because if you're looking for a job and you're unemployed, you really have a job. And that's looking for a job.
Yes.
And that means at least 8 hours a day, you should be doing something in furtherance of that goal. And getting up, working out, meditating, yoga, whatever it takes to get your mind and your body ready for the task ahead, that's what you do. You want to make sure that you eat healthy so that you're not sluggish, so that you can keep your mind sharp and you can plow through the day. You have resumes, cover letters to write. You have research to do on the internet. You need to research businesses to determine which businesses would you like to work for. You need to know what jobs you should apply for, what you're good at, what you like to do. You may be good at something and you don't like to do it. That's not going to help you. Now, strike that. Let me correct myself. It will help you if your need for a job is dire.
Yes.
If you're on the verge of bankruptcy, you may need to take a job that you might not really like. And I hesitate to say that, but it's the reality of life. There are bills to pay. People have responsibilities to others, whether it's family or, as I said, bills. There may be loans to pay off. So each person's personal and individual situation will dictate what they do and how they do it. And moving forward with physical exercise, mental exercise, and during the course of the day, take a break and do something nice for yourself. If it may be watching a movie, it may be taking a walk. So that way, if you like to walk, it's doing something nice for yourself and getting exercise at the same time.
Sure.
But you need to take care of yourself because it may be a long journey.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that's a good place to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Do you have a project or service that you want the world to know about? Or would you like to have your business or project highlighted during the show to a wide audience? If you would like to be a guest or sponsor of the show, please contact us at info@openpagespublishing.com. That's info@openpagespublishing.com. Okay, we're back. I'm talking to Beverly Williams, and she wrote a book called Your GPS to Employment Success: How to Find and Succeed in the Right Job. And we were just talking about how important it is to take care of yourself every day when you're applying for these jobs. Now, Beverly, another thing that your bio had said is that it may not always be a good idea to answer those interview questions honestly. Tell us about that.
I put that in there to pique people's interest, to get people's attention.
You
Now,
got mine.
it's true.
Mhm.
When I graduated, I was about to graduate from law school. I had a job interview at a prestigious law firm. And I was interviewed by one of the partners, and he asked me, he said, "Why did you want to become a lawyer?" And I told him the truth. I told him because I watched Perry Mason, and it really piqued my interest about the law. He looked at me like I was crazy.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I knew that you shouldn't always tell the truth, at least not that way. What I should have said was something like, well, I've always been interested in aspects of the law, and sometimes television shows cause me to think, and I like using my brain, or something cerebral like that. But just, I'm a very direct person. You ask me a question, I'm an honest person too. I tell you the truth.
Sure.
But I think the information I would provide is this: if the truth is not going to serve you very well, and only you can make that determination,
mm-hmm.
Think of ways that you can tell the truth in a way that it will cast you in a more favorable light.
Oh, okay.
And you're going to need to think about it. So you have to anticipate the questions. And let me just say, as someone told me, one of the young women I helped, and I'll tell you that story if we have time, I found out through her that recruiters, HR people, use the questions that are on the internet. So if you go to the internet, practice using those questions.
Right.
Answer those questions and make sure that you form your answer in a way that it makes you look like a desirable candidate, that people will want to work with you because you add value, because you have a pleasant demeanor, or as a friend of mine would say, because you have a nice way about you.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to work with someone that's going to give them a headache on a daily basis because they complain nonstop.
Yes. So how can watching ESPN and the Food Network help us with our job search?
I'm amazed. I am absolutely amazed. Anyone who knows me well knows that I am really not a sports aficionado. A friend of mine called me one Super Bowl Sunday, and I answered my phone, Super Bowl Central is what I said. He said, "Beverly, it's me. I know you're not watching the Super Bowl." But with all the division in our country and all the acrimony and all the negative news, I just started watching ESPN. And I also watch Colin Cowherd on FS1.
Mm-hmm.
I am amazed by the stories these athletes tell. I mean, the the adversity that they've overcome, the work and sacrifice that they put into their careers is just so moving. And likewise, on the Food Network, I like to cook. So the Network is a no-brainer for me. I watch that all the time. And when I watch Chopped and I listen to the stories of the chefs
Mhm.
that are on the show, how they had substance abuse problems, how they were abandoned, how they didn't think that they were worthy of anything. And you listen to just how they climbed out of an abyss and they fought through it, then you know you can do anything. If you listen to them, they will inspire you.
Yes.
They will give you, I think, the intestinal fortitude you need to move forward because you're looking for a job. You're trying, your aspiration is to improve your situation, and you can do it. It can be done, and you have to believe that. And when you watch the Food Network, when you watch these sports shows, sports talk shows, and you listen to the um, the segments that they have that focus and showcase these even college students,
Mhm.
high and high school students, you listen to what they have endured and overcome, and you for you to say that you can't do it is just not anything that should cross your lips.
I agree. I agree. So, what are some inconvenient truths that job seekers need to hear?
Well, I told you one. The things you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And people don't believe that, especially people who think they know everything. And I'm sure we all
Yes.
know people like that.
Yes.
You also don't know all there is about what you've been hired to do. You don't know everything about what you've been hired to do. There's a way that you can acquire information to help you perform better, but you have to be receptive.
Mhm.
You have to be receptive. Change is inevitable.
Yes.
That's an inconvenient truth. Depending on how you grew up, what your family life was like, you need to present yourself as a civil, tolerant, intelligent person. And if it's a sham, let it be a sham. Because if you are um, not respectful to people who don't look like you, who don't sound like you, but who work in the same place that you work,
Mhm.
you're going to have a rough time. And especially if those people are your supervisors.
Correct.
So, those are two very important inconvenient truths.
Okay. So, if you're looking at a job description, and not everybody is always going to meet every line item and can do every line item on that job description, but what are some ways that an applicant can say, well, I can do this, this, and this, but I really don't know how to do this, or should they not even bring that up?
Don't bring it up. It's strange that you should use that example because I was writing something this today I was filling out a questionnaire for a project, and the question, I don't even remember what it was, but it made me remember I had been in a conference room with a meeting with a lot of high level executives, and the person who hired me or brought me into this group committed me to do something that I had never done before and didn't
Oh
know
no.
whether I could do.
Oh no.
And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and I have an expressive face, and I'm sitting here trying to be stone faced because I don't want I don't want to give it away. I don't want them to know that I don't know that he's not telling the truth.
Right.
So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I never told him I could do that. I know I didn't. I don't misrepresent what I can do.
Sure.
Now, I don't tell you I can do it. Doesn't mean I can't do it. I may not have ever done it, but this was something I'd never done before and didn't know whether I could do it. But he was making an affirmative statement that I could do it and I was going to do it. And I was like, after it was over, I said, why did you say that? I never told you that. Well, he says, well, I think you better go find a way to do it. You better find out how to do it. And I did.
Sure.
They call those stretch assignments.
Oh.
When you can't find, if there's something, if you've been hired to do something that's not in your wheelhouse, that you really don't have experience doing. And sometimes that happens because, to your point, there are a number of duties and responsibilities in job descriptions. And I don't think, at least when I hired, I did not expect the person to do everything. But if you do most of the things, you don't have to tell them what you can't do. You just highlight what you do well. Don't lie, because if you lie, that's a problem. Never lie in connection with your employment.
Right.
Especially on those applications, because usually applications have a line certifying that you've told the truth, and you understand that if you haven't told the truth, that you could lose your job.
Yes.
When they find out. So you want to tell the truth, but you're not representing that you can do everything in the job description. It's up to them to determine, based on an interview, based on whatever they use to make the selection, that you're qualified, or that whether they're looking for a qualified person remains to be seen. They may not be looking for a qualified person. I have been in situations where I know that people have hired candidates that were not qualified, but because they like them, they felt the person was intelligent and could learn, that they hired them.
Oh, okay.
So that happens too.
Okay.
The bottom line is job search, getting a job, employment, networking, all of that's important. But sometimes decision makers will connect with people, with candidates. And as long as there's no illegal basis for the selection, it's okay.
Okay, great. So tell our viewers how they can get in touch with you, where they can find you.
My website is www.youremploymentmatters.com. My email address is bawilliams@youremploymentmatters.com.
And tell me about your podcast.
My podcast, and you can access my podcast on Spotify and iTunes, and any other platforms where podcasts are found. It's Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams. There's a wealth of free information on my podcast, the podcast interviews. I've been fortunate enough to interview a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, a rock star, a documentary producer.
Wow.
People who, some who are educated, some who are not. And when I say educated, I mean formally educated with PhDs, some who are not. So a comic that I represented at one point was kind enough to do an interview. An ex NFL player was interviewed. It's just, if you're looking for a job, just go to the podcast, please, and just listen. There's a wealth of information that will help you. I mean, some of the people I interviewed have had, they've been down in the dumps when they lost their job. And I mean, they rose like a phoenix. And have been successful. So there are so many opportunities that don't necessarily present themselves in an obvious way. Sometimes you have to, peel back the onion and get to the core.
Sure, sure. Now, back on your book, I understand it has 125 solid tips. So, can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure, I have it right here. Let me open to a page, the personal appearance section, one of my favorite sections.
Yes.
Now, your personal appearance, this is tip 57. Your personal appearance can help you get hired or cause you to be disregarded.
Yes.
Now, I met a woman at a conference in Washington, D.C. a few years ago, and she was in an investment broker. And when she started out, she was working in Chicago, and she was hired, and she described what she wore to the interview. She was blue suit, white blouse, pumps. That's the way she went in.
Mhm.
And she had success for the first couple of years. And then she decided she had to be herself.
Oh,
That she had been restrained and she was no longer going to acquiesce to the staid dress code of the brokerage firm. And she came in with brightly colored long skirts and jackets with flowers on it and everything. She
oh,
didn't get a promotion after that.
yeah.
And so there was another woman sitting there while she was telling this story. And a woman said to her, "Did it ever occur to you to just change your underwear?"
Oh my.
And the woman said, "I was young. I didn't know any better."
Oh,
So, the moral to that story is to thine own self be true. If you can't, if wearing conservative clothing so that you fit in, working for a conservative business, it's not you. If you're more of a creative, if you're more flamboyant, if you like brighter colors, if you like fuchsia hair, you like to wear fuchsia hair, then maybe you need to find a job that suits you better.
yeah.
That's just my opinion. But what I have found is that when people don't like what you have to say, they ignore you. And I'm okay with that.
Yes.
I just give information freely and they do what they want with it. I'm good.
Do you work a lot with the younger generation?
I do and I don't. I do when I want to because it's not easy.
No, it's not.
Not easy. And when I say that, it's not easy because they're very sensitive.
Mm.
And we've done that to them. One of the things that really distressed me, I read somewhere where a young person asked in a survey about their job, their work, whether their mistakes would be held against them.
Hmm. Oh,
And I thought to myself, are you kidding me? And the person who responded said, no. But it really depends on how serious the mistake is. And I said, that's not a fair response.
right.
Of course, your mistakes are going to be held against you. You may see reference to that mistake on your performance review.
Yes.
Will it cause you to lose your job? Maybe not. The person was right because it depends on how serious and how impactful, negatively impactful the mistake is on your supervisor, on the business.
Yes.
But to ask, will my mistakes be held against you? Yes,
Of course
is the
they will.
answer.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, of course, and they didn't want to hear, of course. So the person that responded to them didn't tell them, of course.
Correct.
And that's a disservice. So I have to be in the right frame of mind to respect. And when I say young people, I work with the young people I'm close to.
Mhm.
And I know that there are all manners of personalities and educational backgrounds. Some have masters, some didn't graduate from high school.
Yes.
So, they're at different they're in different employment positions. Their ability to move forward is different in many respects. Some are entrepreneurs, some are not. But one thing that I'm concerned about is that it doesn't appear, based on my limited, and I admit that this is limited, on my limited information gathering, I'm not satisfied that especially new young employees are getting as much information about ethics as they should.
Correct. Yes, I see that.
How to conduct themselves ethically. One of my young friends said something to me. We were having a discussion, and I made a suggestion. She said, I told her about one of my podcast interviews, and she said something to me, and I made a suggestion. And then she said, "Oh, and I'm going to tell him this, and I'm going to tell him that." I said, "Okay, stop.
Mm-hmm.
You need to go tell your boss what you're about to do, and see what he says. And then after he says what he says, you go back and you send him an email thanking him for his advice and tell him that you're going to follow his advice and this is what you're going to do. That way you will have a record that you went to someone and you asked for guidance."
Great information. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? No, they don't know. They have no clue. They're really flying blind.
Yes, and ready to fly off at the handle at any moment. Yes.
Exactly. No negative intent, just looking for information. But they have to be careful.
They do.
They
we all do in this day and age, for sure.
And I said, whenever you mention your employer's name, always disclose. Always go back to your boss and disclose, and you do what I suggest that you do.
Yes. Well, Beverly, I want to thank you for being on the show tonight. We've gotten a lot of good information. Again, can you tell everybody how to get a hold of you, please?
My email address is bawilliams@youremploymentmatters.com. My website is www.youremploymentmatters.com. My podcast, which is available on Spotify and iTunes and other podcast platforms, is Your Employment Matters with Beverly Williams.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michelle. I enjoyed this so much.
Good. Thank you.
Great information. I hope it was useful information that people will benefit from.
I'm sure they will be able to.
And if they would leave, if they listen to my podcast, if they would leave a review, I would appreciate it. And please consider buying your GPS to Employment Success from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or independent bookstores.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. This is Michelle Bannister. If you want to be a guest or a sponsor on the web on this show, please contact me, info@openpagespublishing.com. This is Michelle, and I'm reminding you to start today and live the life that you were meant to live.